Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Are you craving for that special meal that will entice your taste buds and leave you with lasting thrilling memories? Look no further. Spice Island Bulenga has got your answer. Natural, fresh and delicious juice, the best meals. Don't miss our daily specials from Monday to Sunday. Pizza Wednesday, Saturday Pizza Bonanza, you buy one and take two. Come dine with us and feel the experience. We are located at Prime Shopping Center in Bulenga, Mitiana Road. For inquiries, call us on 0704111720. Spice Island, we treat your cravings.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
A very good morning, our viewers. You're most welcome to this show, Tekachi, airing live on our Facebook channels and pages, The Alternative Uganda and Digitalk TV. We are always live every Tuesday at 11. We apologize for a little bit delays. We are a little bit late by 20 minutes, but I hope we shall add up some compensation to make our show run as it always runs for 1 hour. You're most welcome, and I am Katoto Mzime hosting this show. Interestingly, today I bring Counsel Wills Tumwine. He's an advocate of the High Court, and he's a legal practitioner. I think he practices in all fields, but specifically family, land matters, and he's an economist. Tax issues, if you have any tax issues, you can always reach out to him. But before I give him an opportunity to introduce himself, I want to bring to you something that seems to be new to the ears of our viewers out there and the public, especially something relating to the promise to marry. If you promise to marry your girlfriend, or your girlfriend promises to marry their boyfriend, what are the legal consequences that the same promise carries? And we shall be delving much into that, and what you need to know in marriages in Uganda, and definitely if time allows, we shall also reach to the matrimonial property and how it arises and how it is dealt with within the marriage, during and after. So, Counsel Wills, you're most welcome to this show, and say hello to our viewers.
Thank you, Counsel Kato, for the invitation to this particular great show. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, our dear viewers.
Okay. You're most welcome to this show. And our topical discussion today will be about things that our viewers need to know, especially when we are talking about marriage in Uganda. And we shall look at the basis of the law and what is required, specifically if somebody is interested in marrying another one. And there is a case that has been making rounds everywhere almost, a case that involves the breach of a promise to marry. That is the case of Tumwine Richard versus Chad Kunda Fortunate in Kanungu. So this defendant breached the promise to marry. And I want you to start from that and highlight to our viewers what amounts, from the beginning, what amounts to a promise to marry?
Yeah, thank you, Counsel Kato. Good morning, viewers, once again. Basically, the question posed to me is in the context of expounding or clarifying what amounts to a promise to marry.
Yes.
But before I go to that, kindly, if you may allow, Mr. Kato, or Counsel Kato, perhaps to start with basically a simple definition of what marriage is all about. And this one can well be clarified by use of a case law, which is the Hyde versus Hyde, in which marriage was clarified as a union of a man and a woman at the exclusion, I repeat, at the exclusion of the other parties. However, that explanation in that particular case of Hyde versus Hyde, you realize that it is not all that exhaustive, because we know that we do have some marriages where you find they are polygamous in nature. Take, for example, the Islamic marriages or the customary marriages. And also, it lacks, in a way, to fulfill what we see in the society in context of the divorces that happen now and then. So it's not that the union of man and woman is going to be forever and ever without any exceptions. There can be exceptions of polygamous marriages, as already clarified, as well as maybe in case of unfortunate events, divorce that happens. So now, when we go back to promise to marry, yes, it is a very interesting case that has been decided of recently, hardly even 3 months ago, between, that is Tumwine Richard, as you well stated, versus Fortunate Charukunda. Yeah, it is a very brilliant decision that was decided in that particular case. It is a brilliant decision to the extent of one clarifying more about what a promise to marry means. And this one leads us to what a contract also means.
Yes.
Because if you may allow me to expound, Council Kato, a contract as per the Contracts Act, number 7, section 10, is to the effect that a contract is an agreement. I repeat, a contract is an agreement between consenting parties, between consenting parties of capacited contract for a lawful consideration and with a lawful object and with an intention of being legally bound. So in that definition, as specified in Section 10 of Contracts Act 2010, number 7, you realize that 5 elements are well expounded in that particular definition. Number 1, there is capacity contract.
So when we talk about capacity, I want you to expand more. When you talk about capacity, you should be able to explain to our viewers what falls under capacity.
Yeah, thank you. So our dear viewers, you need to know that as per the definition I've shared with you, there are 5 elements in a contract for it to be legally binding. And the first one is capacity contract. And as per our constitution, you realize that you can have the capacity contract for as long as you are 18 years and above. 18 years and above. That is for a contract to be valid. Then there must be a lawful object. Or in other words, that which you are going to engage in should be lawful. As an example, you can now in Uganda not say that you're contracting to supply me with marijuana. That one will be an illegal or invalid contract. But in the case of marriage, that one is a lawful aspect of life or object to engage in, you know. So that one is binding. Then you have to also have a kind of a consideration. And regardless of the amount, even if it's 1 shilling, the viewers need to know that for as long as there is that bit of a price, value for money, consideration, then that one also becomes an element of a contract. And that there must be an intention to always be bound legally. So the viewers need to know that once you get into a contract, it does not end there and then. It has to be with an intention of being legally bound. You understand? Exactly. And it has to be willfully done without any coercion, without any fraud, without intimidation, and due duress, and all sorts of things. Those are some of the factors that can vitiate a contract. So when we go back to that particular case, which actually, in my view, to me, is supposed to be embraced by even courts of record. It's just unfortunate that, well, at least it was a very brilliant decision. It was decided at the lower court.
By the chief magistrate.
Exactly, by His Worship, if I remember the name, Asanasio. Asanasio, exactly. You realize that his reasoning was very, very right. His rational decision was very right. This is a lady called Charukunda. Charukunda, fortunate, not so?
Yes, yes.
Who agrees from the onset with a one to win a Richard that they get into a relationship which they intend to transform into a marriage. And as far as the law is concerned, you realize that a promise to marry, once it is breached, then it becomes a problem, or it can create quite a lot of legal-related issues. So this gentleman, Tumwine Richard, ends up financing the education of the one Charukunda fortunate, and to what the usual wananchi would say, yamuteka musente. You know, she proceeded to acquire all the kind of education that she would acquire, which implies there was that kind of transformative value. And the transformative value is to the effect of, from the time Tumwine Richard finds Charukunda fortunate, you know, as far as his academic credentials are concerned, at the time when the girl is paid for school fees with an intent of getting legally bound in marriage, and later she says she's no longer interested in the marriage, and that Mr. Tumwine should end up getting another wife.
But
so that one literally relates to a breach of marriage, which is a bond of key contention.
Yes, Counsel.
Yes.
I get that one, and I have followed that decision. I have read it and internalized it.
Yes.
But I want to bring you now in realities, because we have not had so many decisions in such kind of a line where we have had a breach of a promise to marry itself. And we have had these relationships where a man or a boy engages with a girl or a wife, whichever case may be, and maybe they have not stipulated what their relationship will lead to. Because some of them want to date for the sake of dating, maybe for having the company of each other at the university. And maybe because one party is more privileged than the other, then we see somebody helping the education of the other. Yes. Does it mean that where I help a different gender, which is a female gender now in my case, does that amount to a promise to marry?
Actually, thank you so much. You posed a very pertinent question that seeks further clarity. However, the two that you've related to are a little bit different.
Yeah, that's why I want you to explain to the viewers.
Yeah, so the viewers,
if somebody is there and decides to help a girl, a girlfriend or what, without any making it clear whether they will end up getting married or not, that doesn't amount to the
That is a very good one. So our dear viewers need to really understand that when it comes to matters of promise to marry and a mere dating, mere dating can tantamount to a mere path in a way or the other. And a mere path in this context is the effect of you, the one who is being dated, or the one who is dating the other. You just need to be careful the kind of the words you use or the kind of assurances that you use. Okay. If you are telling a girl that surely you have dropped out in P7, I'm going to pay for you O level, I'm going to pay for you A level, provided you accept that upon you finishing A level and even upon you finishing maybe a diploma or a degree, courtesy of the expenses I incur in as far as your education endeavors are concerned, then please let us commit. Promise me that you will marry me, or that will end up being man and woman and form a family, which is the best unit of society. So this is what exactly we see happening between Richard Tumwine and the other lady, Fortunate Charikunda. They agreed and promised to one another, heaven on earth, that indeed, as far as higher education pursuits are concerned, once they are completed, this gentleman will be in a way or the other remunerated with giving him a hand in marriage. So that is exactly what tantamounts to a promise in marriage, of which the breach tantamounts to a cause of action. You understand? And that's why you see when Tumwine Richard goes to the courts in Kanungu, the courts welcome him and they hear or listen to the submission that he makes, much as the other lady was served. You know, she didn't appear, but at the end of the day, the law is explicit and precise. A decision had to be decided ex parte.
Okay.
Exactly.
So when we talk about this arrangement between the two parties, should we say that such kind of a promise must be it in writing? Is it oral? Is it implied?
Yes, exactly.
Or what exactly? And how exactly should it be like?
Yeah, of course, a promise to marry at the end of the day also relates to the contract, to what the contract amounts to. A contract can either be oral, it can be written, or it can be partly oral, or it can be partly written. And the viewers also need to know that the contract can be imputed from the conduct of the parties. So in all the other, when Fortunate was studying, the entire behavior, the entire conduct, the entire everything with Tumwine Richard tantamounted into really these people who have promised each other to go into marriage ultimately, and at the end of the day, one of them breaches the contract or the promise to marry. Exactly. But it is very different from when a gentleman dates, say, like a lady, and then they are basically there for, should I say, their own luxury and mere pleasantries, but without getting into the in-depth of that aspect of like promise to marry. So the two should be handled carefully. or they should be looked at differently.
So it doesn't matter whether written or not written.
Yes, it does not matter whether written or not written.
The intention.
There is the intention and the implied conduct. Okay. Yes, exactly.
So we have had instances where two people who are dating each other are staying together. Maybe they have not specified at one point that I will marry you, however much we are staying together in the same house, and maybe conducting ourselves and behaving as husband and wife, but I have never promised to marry such and such a person. Does that qualify to be a promise to marry as well?
Still, it depends, and it's subjective, and it's a very good inquiry. And that's the reason why you see, amongst the types of marriages we have, there is no place for cohabitation. Okay. So viewers must take note of it. Cohabitation is not there. Perhaps you are cohabiting because, I mean, after all, it's your right, and that you are just there for companionship. Okay. You understand? And that at the end of the day, you are there not to be as man and woman who are married, but at the end of the day, you just want maybe to take different routes at the end of the day. So that's one thing the viewers need to know, that people who are cohabiting are not seen as being married. For them to be married, they have to go and get married in any form of marriage that is provided for by our laws here.
So we look at the instances where, for example, we are somewhere having a glass of wine or a glass of juice or a cup of coffee with a female, for example. I'm talking about my case, and I'm giving this as an example so that our viewers can understand what exactly I'm trying to bring about. Maybe when we take about 2-3 glasses of wine, should I say accidentally or jokingly, utter out and make a promise to marry this fellow person that I'm having at the same time.
Yeah.
And maybe when tomorrow I could not remember what I was saying last night, and this lady could have taken it to be serious. Does it also qualify, and does it mean that I promise to marry that person?
Absolutely not so. Reason being, in that instance, you would be seen as a person who would be under influence. You understand? You would be under influence, and you are not in your right mental faculties at the time of you taking 3 or 4 glasses. So kindly, that one cannot easily be considered as a promise to marry, but maybe it could be like a starting point. You never know, next time you'll find her, you'll meet her over a cup of coffee.
Yes.
When you are well sane and you are in your good proportion of your mind. So surely when you are under influence or intoxicated, you cannot really say that, yes, you really meant it when you said promise to marry.
Okay.
Exactly.
So when do we differentiate where a person is serious about making that promise to marry and where they are not serious? And when can such a promise to marry be enforced by the laws, and when can it not be enforced? Yeah,
once again, the viewers need always to be mindful of a contract as defined, as I've clarified.
Yes.
You know, a contract being an agreement between consenting parties, an agreement between consenting parties with capacity contract over a lawful object, and with the consideration, of course, that in a way or the other can be parted, and to be legally bound in that particular engagement or relationship they've started. Okay. So what that one literally means is that if you want to put a yardstick on when it qualifies for promise to marry or not, then you need to look at the conduct. That is number one. The imputed conduct, the way people are behaving, the kind of talking they are having now and then, the usual way they live with one another, you know, and the promises they make to one another. Okay. Instances can be there where they can be written, others can be oral, others can be verbal. People can even end up visiting the other's homes and so on and so forth. To an extent, indeed, you are like telling these other people not to bother tamper with that particular partner, because it's like wasimbie wakati. You understand? So in such instance, surely that one would tantamount into a promise to marry. However, you see this particular case of Tumwine Richard and the Charikunda Fortunate, it is going to be a very key defining case for courtship moments. Okay. You understand? Whereby ignorance of the law at the end of the day will not be a defense. Because boys and girls, they now need to be mindful of the kind of
which kind of relationships,
which kind of relationships take, the words take, etc. You understand? These ladies who really put on very nice, tantalizing kind of attire for their gentlemen and they whisper lots and lots of sweet goods or nothings, they will meet the repercussion at the end of the day if they don't fulfill some of the obligations that they commit to do what? to fulfill, yeah. So that's how I can easily clarify it.
Okay, thank you so much, Council Wills. In instances now, because we are trying to help people, and I hope time will allow us, so that when we finish this issue of promising to marry somebody, and maybe the marrying part does not take place, and then after we can go to when that marriage takes place, and the viewers can understand. In this situation where we are still living and we are still basing on the promise that we made to each other to get married at the end of it, and we acquire property, how is that property treated? Is it treated as a property that is jointly owned? Is it treated as property falling under our time that we are staying together, promising to marry each other? How is that kind of property acquired
okay.
during that time?
Yeah, thank you, Council. Council Kato, I clearly can see you are now taking the viewers to what we call matrimonial property.
Yes.
So, yeah, and of course, matrimonial property is something that needs to be well understood between parties, whether in courtship or whether in marriage, and then they get to understand the earmarked properties that could be looked at as matrimonial, and those that are not supposed to be looked at as matrimonial.
Yes.
But you see, at hand, often at times you find a confusion whereby, say, some people think that upon marriage, then they have the equal rights and share of the property that they found even before marriage came on board. And that is totally wrong. The law is very clear with matrimonial property.
Is it separated? If I marry, for example, let me use Teddy here. He's our camera person today. If I marry Teddy,
yes,
and
please.
she finds me owning maybe this house and maybe a plot of land somewhere, after I marry her, does she have a share on the property that she found me with? No. Or that one is separated from the property that we acquired after marriage?
I get you very well, and the law is very clear, unless if you so wish to give her a share. And I'm not saying it so that at the end of the day she sees me as a very bad man. No. Teddy, please take note. These are just,
matters
this is
of
the law. Exactly, matters of the law.
Yeah.
The reality is the property she finds, it is your property.
Okay.
You get my point? It's your property. If you're convinced that she really needs to have a share of that property that you sweated and worked for back in the days, then well and good. And by the way, it does not mean that even when you get married to her, then the law stops you from getting your own individual property. Or the law stops her from getting her own individual property. Because we see still, even in marriage, people are getting properties differently. You get my point? You buy a plot of land, you put in your names. She buys her car, she puts in her names. You get my point? So it doesn't mean that you lose your right of association with others or your right of owning a property individually once you become married. No. The law is very clear on that.
So marriage does not bundle us into one basket.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
And form part of the matrimonial
not necessarily. And the case law has gone ahead to expound more on what tantamounts into a matrimonial property. If you look at the case of like Rwabnumi versus by Msomwe, you realize that the court goes ahead even to understand the intricacies involved in terms of the monetary contributions and the non-monetary contributions. And that was a Supreme Court case, by the way, Court of Appeal, I think, of 2009, whereby it was well established that when you're looking at the contributions to a matrimonial property, you need to look at the monetary contributions, how much money has each party put in. And but still that you also need to look at the non-monetary contributions. So, and that's where, like, the female gender was often interested in knowing how do you account for the non-monetary contribution. Take, for example, of a woman stays at home, takes care of domestic requirements, takes kids at school, bathes them, cooks food, and all sorts of things. Get my point? So it was a very key decisive case back then. But then, court of recent has again restaged their position, because in Rwabnumi they were overemphasizing the aspect of equal distribution or equal
of
sharing.
And 50-50.
Absolutely. You understand?
Of each party.
Yeah, looking at the monetary contribution vis-a-vis the non-monetary. Yeah, as if when even a woman offers sex to the husband, then that is a non-monetary that needs to be looked out. As if it's only
quantified.
As if it's only men who enjoy. No, even women who want to believe they also enjoy. You get my point? So there is an interesting case which I wish the viewers and many other interested parties could look out for. It is a recent case of 2022. I mean, sorry, the case is of 2015, but it was
decided in 2020.
That is Ambayo.
Ambayo.
Ambayo who?
Esther.
Joseph, no, Ambayo. Joseph Weigo versus Jacqueline Aserua. Exactly. In which instance, the justice of the Court of Appeal, it comes as an appeal from the High Court.
Yes.
Justice of the Court of Appeal related to an instance whereby you need to also come up with even a quantum of what you term as a domestic value add by a woman. You understand? Or the what we call non-monetary.
Non-monetary.
When you talk of
for
non-monetary,
example, washing utensils.
Exactly.
Washing clothes.
Yes.
Mopping and sweeping the house.
Absolutely.
Taking kids to the school.
Exactly.
Those are the kind of contributions.
You need to look out for the quantum. How much money would you think could have been spent had the woman been paid money, you understand, for the services that she offered? Because it all comes from a property which was termed as matrimonial. Yes. And to the man, he was like, this property, it's me who bought it. You know, I bought the land, I did a bigger chunk, and it's me who constructed, etc., etc. Whatever the lady talks about, it is just mere cosmetic. Okay. So court realized that whereas it was matrimonial, because the intent of building a house on that land was for the family to settle.
Okay.
After all those years of cohabitation, still they had to go in and now look at what could be that quantum amount.
What did each party contribute?
Exactly. You get my point? Yes. Now, what happens ultimately, court decided in awarding her a 20% out of that matrimonial property to base itself even on deducting the money the gentleman, Mr. Ambao, paid for the school expenses. You know, of Jacqueline. You get my point? Of Jacqueline. Because you see, at the time of cohabitation, Jacqueline had not even finished her primary living examination level.
Yes.
So the man paid for her, and he proceeded to O-level, and proceeded to other higher...
vocational institution to learn some skills.
To learn some skills in tailoring, baking. Is it even sent her for driving lessons?
Yes.
Of which all that had to be put into account and had to be used to reduce on the amount that she was entitled for, hence reaching at a 20% that was accorded to her by the Court of Appeal.
Okay.
Yes,
now,
exactly. Yeah.
There is something, of course, thank you so much for highlighting this issue of matrimonial property. But before we went to the matrimonial property, I was asking, and my question still is, what happens to the property that we acquire in the period of courtship? And maybe we end up not marrying each other. And maybe we acquired this property together. There was a contribution by each party. What happens to that property?
I would rather say the law is very clear, because when you are not married, surely there is no instance of a matrimonial property arising.
Okay.
Matrimonial property, as already clarified, is to the effect of that which the parties in the marriage decide that this is their home. And actually, matrimonial property is not limited to one home. Parties can decide, man and woman can decide, let's have a matrimonial property in Mbarara, let's have a matrimonial property in Kampala, etc. It is that which they work towards, saying, this is our matrimonial property. But the law doesn't stop them from either getting properties with other people or getting properties individually. Okay. It is very well laid down in the Constitution. You know? Now, what happens is, for those properties that are acquired together during courtship. Then you may need to invoke equity.
Okay.
Because he who comes equity comes with a clean hands, you know. So you need to substantiate and expound more on whether indeed you contributed whatever you claim to have contributed. He who alleges must prove. You get my point? Perhaps there was a written agreement. Perhaps you could deduce it from the implied conduct. and all sorts of things, you know. So by the time you justify this maximum of equality is equity or equity is equality, then you have to go ahead to do what? Substantiate what you're exactly saying with the evidence that you bring on board. Exactly.
Because why I asked that question is relating to this Tumwine case in Kanungu, and unfortunate.
Yes.
In that case, when I was reading the judgment, I did not find anywhere where the property they had acquired together was resolved.
Whether, what particular property did they acquire together?
I am asking because I believe...
I've read the entire case?
Yes, I have read it, and I want us to now to leave this case and look into realities. Because we have had colleagues who are staying with their girlfriends for a lot of time, and maybe they have went further to acquire property. And if we say that the precedents and the decision in this case should be used by other courts as a precedent, then it means that the people out there maybe would have issues relating with the breach of promise to marry but have acquired property may be scared because they are not seeing the context of property and how it was dealt with in this case. And that's why I asked, if we acquired that property and the promise to marry was breached, do we have any remedies for each party?
Yes, I would say that we do, for as long as the aggrieved party can fully substantiate with clear evidence on the arrangement that was arrived at by the time those properties were acquired. That's why you see in the case of Richard Tumwine versus Fortunate, that Kanungu case, you realize that the gentleman was in position to quantify the school fees that he had paid for this young girl from the time he picked on her until the time when she finished school. You understand? Was it about close to 9 million or 9 plus something? You know? And at the end of the day, court even awarded the damages. But of course, I think the damages, in my view, were just too little. But I think maybe his worship looked into the capability or the capacity of the girl to pay off the damages here. But by and large, I think the key picture here to pick, or the key point to pick, is that you need to substantiate that you have contributed. You know, and whenever you are going into the legal registration of those items or assets that you have bought together before marriage, you need to ensure that your name is also indicated for ease of reference if at all anything goes bad. So when somebody gets drunk, in quotes, by love, and he passes on all their legal rights, you know, in terms of documentation and anything to do with signing to the other party, then there could be some mistrust that can develop at the end of the day, which would injure their exact position that would be attaining. Had they been very careful and as far as due diligence is concerned, in ensuring that they are included in as far as legal ownership is concerned. So what happens there in terms of remedies is one would invoke equity. Even if the one who is at a loss feels like he has a matter to bring to the courts of law, then he or she will have to swear what we call an affidavit. You know, you narrate a story of how you ended up accumulating properties together even
which
when
properties?
You are cohabiting, which properties perhaps were written in the names of the man alone, and this time around the man doesn't want to offer anything to you since you're separating, and then court would look into all those intricacies involved. You know? Look at your evidence, look at your submissions, look at what you've shown in the affidavit, and then they can always decide. That is from the equity perspective, so that you don't walk away, you know, empty-handed. Exactly.
You should get a share of what you contributed.
Absolutely.
To. Okay, thank you so much, Council Will. And I want us to first go to the comments and see what people are saying. Kakuru is following. Gerard Akena, and thank you for the show. I'm kindly monitoring. And Lesap asks, sir, how about the property we get together and put it in both our names?
I beg your pardon?
How about the property we get together and put it in both our names?
Before marriage or after?
Before.
Before marriage, that is very okay. So if you put it in your names together, if it is land, for example, that would be a joint tenancy. Not so? Joint tenancy. And joint tenancy, it is the effect of equal sharing or equal ownership over that particular land.
So it means the property will be owned equally?
Equally. But contrary to tenancy in common. Tenancy in common is to the effect of like a man deciding, say, I will take 80% of the shares and the woman will take 20 exactly. So those ones are always well split out and earmarked so that at the end of the day, if they're dividing, then it becomes obvious exactly.
Another one says, when separating, who takes the property? Is it the woman, since most cases she goes with the kids, or the man? Let's say it's the house where we have been staying. I think this is in regards to married people.
Yeah, in regard to married people, but still the
because
viewer needs to know.
She brought in an aspect of one party going with the children.
Yeah, one party going with the children, but still it depends on who is actually going with the children. Of course, when the kids are below 7, normally priority is given to a woman. But it's not that it's a must, because guess where is there, where even the children below 7 have always been given to men.
To the men.
You understand? So still, and then you look out for like the kind of contribution the other party who does not stay with the kids will end up making. You get my point? Yeah. So assuming they're all staying in the house, then they can always reach an agreement on who is to stay in the house or is to leave the house. We've seen instances where even people get separated by they stay in the house.
They stay together in the same house.
Yes, the court is aware that they are staying together in the house.
But each one
has their limits. Yeah.
Own bedroom and
exactly. Yeah.
But they still remain under the same roof.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So it depends really. It's a case by case basis.
So it means it is not a must that when we separate with my wife, for example, we must share and deal with
No, you can't. Separation does not tantamount to divorce. Because that's the instance whereby they would have issued a decree Nisai.
Yes.
You understand? Then they give you more time of seeing if at all you can work out together the issues that
reconcile.
you had and you reconcile.
And
because you see, the reality is courts are always mindful of protecting the institution of marriage. Marriage is, a family is the best unit of society.
Yes.
You know, and that's what the right-thinking member of the society would always agree with, unless if the worst comes to the worst, then that's when the separation can come in, decree Nisai, and then ultimately the decree absolute divorce, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, this one asks Council Kato, please ask Council that how does copyright law connect with matrimonial property? For example, if I married someone when I am a music composer or a film producer, can the same woman with whom I want to divorce say that she was maybe cooking food for me while composing my songs or any artworks, and therefore can she claim some of my works? This is a very good and interesting question. I wish you could highlight it so well.
Yeah, copyright surely is a different field altogether. And I hear him, he's saying that if at all I'm a musician, the other person has maybe been cooking food or giving any kind of support, surely that is a different law altogether. It doesn't get mixed into marriage-related aspects, unless if they compose the song together.
I feel it is... When we talk about copyright, it is different from what we are discussing and matrimonial property.
Yes.
But he brings in an idea and an issue that is so pertinent in our discussion today. Because in the recent case of Ambayo and Aserua,
exactly,
and
yes.
Aserua,
Yes.
Courts were clear and defined what they must be mindful of while deciding which share a person is taking. And they looked at the contribution of each party.
True.
As this husband is composing his music, the wife is cooking food or maybe blending juice for this husband to help his voice. That's a contribution. And when this music is produced, it is earning some money at the end of it all.
True.
And they are looking at now divorcing each other. Does this wife also claim a share on the proceeds got from the music composed during their marriage?
Still, I would say it would be extremely far-fetched if you look at that aspect of the
contribution.
Of the contribution in terms of like cooking food or making juice, so that the
even
gentleman
ironing for you clothes so that you go at the show looking so smart.
And also the gentleman gets a good voice to sing well. No,
that is a contribution.
That one would be too much, but if the semantics of that nature were to be looked at, then perhaps it could be a business that a woman has always been interested in. But at the end of the day, I don't see really copyright coming into marriage. After all, there are different laws altogether. But that the key picking we pick, the principle we pick, I think, from that case of Mbayo, is to the effect of how to deal with non-monetary aspects. How do you quantify the value related? That's why you see court ends up saying, let us look at the educational value this woman has received. The former president of South Africa, the post-apartheid president, Nelson Mandela, one time said that education is extremely transformative. It is a very big tool to transform the society. It can transform a personal development of anybody that partakes into education. So this gentleman ultimately educates the girl. The girl is no longer the below P7 category. The girl is now even having social networks left, right, and center. And then they are saying that you need to look at that amount, quantify it, and deduct it off from this which she claims she offered in forms of making juice, cooking food, etc., etc.
Okay.
You know? Yes, and that's how ultimately, it's a court of appeal case. Court ends up awarding her 20%.
20% in the property.
And remember, at the High Court, her lordship,
50%.
Exactly. Her lordship, Catherine Bamgemereri, had that kind of gender instinct of having sidelined with the lady and given her 50%. And that's why, to the maximum of equality is equity, does not relate in this instance. You cannot say that equality is equity. And then you say that even in appropriation or distribution of the marital property, you will follow that particular maximum.
Okay.
So I think that's a very good exception.
I think we got to this one. This one asks, under what circumstances does the law permit property sharing?
Under what?
Under what circumstances does the law permit property sharing?
I think it is a wider question which we've been expounding on.
Yes.
At the time of dissolution of the marriage, there has to be, in essence, property sharing. But to the main point, and what everybody needs to know, actually every Ugandan, it's not that it has to be 50-50. No, this case of Ambayo has demystified the law very well.
And it's about
what you have contributed. In terms of monetary, vis-a-vis non-monetary as well, but then it all gets looked at. And
so
then you get that.
If we are not interested in divorcing, can't we share our property? Maybe I want to take my share into an investment.
Yeah, still it depends. Then in that case, it wouldn't be termed as matrimonial property anymore. Because assuming you have built a house of like 5 rooms, will you say that you want to take 2 and then you sell them off on the same title? No, it is impossible. But if it is land, and you say that we were supposed to have, let's say, like 50 by 100, 50 by 100 each, and which had composed the 100, we can subdivide. Then you take your 50, I take my 50. So it depends on case by case still. Yeah.
Okay, that's so good. And thank you so much. I hope our viewers are following so clearly, and they have been able to get something that is useful for them. I have been following URSB recently.
Yes, please.
And there is an interesting article that I read about concerning registration of single people so that you acquire a single status certificate. I don't know, Council, if you're aware about that. Because that one arose, I think there was a complaint where a lady married a man who was married earlier. Yes. So this was a second marriage, which was illegal and unlawful. And when they went to URSB to check, they were advised to always check the register and find out people who are single by acquiring that certificate of a single status. So that you don't fall a prey of dating or marrying a married man
exactly.
already.
Okay.
And when we talk about a registration of marriages, does it apply to all kinds of marriages, or it is limited to a specific number?
Registration of marriages, it's pertinent that people who are married actually ensure that they are registered.
Okay.
Of course, church marriage, we see registration happening there. A customary marriage, governed by Customary Marriage Registration Act, it also emphasizes on the need to register. Same applies to Mohammedan or Muslim marriages or Islamic marriages, Hindu, civil, and all sorts of things. So registration really is a standard. I think it's prudent that marriages get registered in or the other. But that one which you bring about, there are some things really whereby you clearly see that somebody is trying to write on top of the water. I'm not trying to compromise or dilute the efforts URSB is coming up with.
Okay.
But clearly, in my view, it sounds like a failure from the onset. Reason being, of course, we have many people who will be telling lies. You know, they tell lies that they are not married. What will you do to them?
Swear an affidavit and declare themselves as single.
Exactly.
And
yet in actual sense,
commissioned and registered.
Exactly. You get my point? Yet in the actual sense, we know them as married people. So I think at the end of the day, it goes back to the moral fabric of the society and how we have to ensure that that aspect of bigamy, by the way, bigamy is what they may be trying to calm down. Bigamy is the aspect of one marrying another when they are already married. You understand? And they've not divorced. Eh? So my thinking is that perhaps there could be better approaches of dealing with that particular challenge. You understand? Eh? As opposed to thinking that each and every person will go to URSB to register as a single status person.
Sorry, yeah.
Exactly.
So that you acquire that status.
Then URSB will start charging fees. Fees for registration.
It is charged for.
Which many wananchi will not be willing to do what?
To pay.
To pay and stuff like that. So there are some things which you clearly see that are whilst they are being adopted by the parties that be, at the end of the day, you look at the efficacy. What is that you're trying to achieve and how can you achieve it? And by the way, will you achieve it? So we are not saying that it cannot be implemented, but ultimately there are some which land on the harbors of failure automatically. So you need to look at the efficacy of that aspect.
Muyaka Alfred, thank you for watching and thank you for following our show. This is the gentleman behind the Dear Young Lawyers series. He has always advised the Dear Young Lawyers.
Yes.
Yeah, with so many different good quotes and something that are useful to their career. Jeremiah Muchivi, also watching, is saying, why should we register? We the singles, they want to violate our rights of marriage as soon as we can.
Yeah, the man is right.
But to say, the reasoning of URSB registering the people who are single, it is that when you get married, you must be registered. And when somebody is checking about your status, they find you are either married. And now, how do we determine that you are single?
So, but still, on the other hand, URB needs also to realize that they have very many ways of getting the statistics or the information for the people who are married. Because these churches, when they marry as licensed places, they pass on the information also. Exactly. So you telling wananchi that go back and check your status, register your status, it's like as if you're creating maybe jobs for some people who will be doing that work, or looking at ways of earning income from wananchi, which really does not augur well at all.
Okay.
There are many ways in which the married people can easily be estimated or arrived at in terms of the numbers.
Thank you so much for always following and your questions. Keep your questions and comments flowing in and we shall be able to respond always. And Will's time is not on our side and I will give you like 2-3 minutes to give your conclusive remarks for today's show. Yeah,
thank you, Kasokatsu, once again. And thanks to our dear viewers for the time that we've been with you. Thank you to the technical team behind the coverage. Yeah, the topic at hand, definitely, I believe we've done quite some good justice to it.
Before you conclude, there is a question that has come in.
Yes, please.
Under what circumstances is someone who was introduced by another woman can marry more other 2 wives?
Under what?
He has been introduced by a woman.
Yes.
But maybe he is interested in marrying other 2 women.
Oh, that is fine. I think that one is simple and clear. If at all he's not a Muslim, he goes customary.
He
goes
okay,
customary.
You get the answer.
But you see, often the times people end up marrying without knowing the kind of marriage that they will settle for.
They are entering.
You understand? Customary marriage, you can even marry as many as you can afford.
It's polygamous in nature.
It's polygamous in nature. Exactly, yeah. Muhammadan, I understand, it reasonably allows up to 4. Okay. You understand? Exactly, yeah. So that's it, yeah.
So you can go ahead and give your final remarks, advice to the viewers. And
I've already appreciated you, Kasokato, for the good service that you extend to the public at large and to all our dear viewers as well as the technical team behind the coverage. The topic at hand, of course, has been to do with promise to marry and instances of the breach of promise to marry. Of course, I've quite related that aspect with the clarity that is attained from what a contract amounts to. Okay. I've expounded more on the 5 elements of a contract, and that at the end of the day, you need to look out for an aspect of a breach of a contract. Promise to marry is not something that is very new. It has been there ever since back in the days, you know. But what the court is looking out for is how best can we avail a remedy in instances of a promise to marry, meaning there was intent, which was either explicit or implicit. You understand? Implied, either oral or written, verbal or anything, you know? And of course, at the end of the day, we've seen many times where people can't even do kwanjura. People can't even do kuchara. But at the end of the day, things fall apart. So I think in this particular case of Richard Tumwine versus Jacqueline Charikunda, it is a very, very pertinent case. How I wish it could be confirmed or ratified by the courts of record, so that at the end of the day, it sets a pace in as far as the promise to marry is concerned in our environment in Uganda. Okay. Outside there, we know there are lots of people with bleeding hearts because they've been heartbroken in many instances. They've paid school fees on these promises. Then at the end of the day, things fall apart, you know. So I think this will be a very good awakening case, decision, so that at the end of the day, we see sanity in society. We've seen people kill each other, Kasokato. The other day there was, I think, something that was moving on social media where, a man had to shoot a woman. Lots and lots of bullets, you know. So those instances and unfortunate situations are the ones that at the end of the day will be curbed if at all this case is given a very good analysis and maybe consideration by the courts of records, so that it can become a very good key guiding tool at the end of the day to the society. Otherwise, thank you so much for God and my country. I remain Councillor Tumwine Wills here.
Thank you so much, Councillor Wills, for honoring our invitations and being part of this show. As we promised our viewers, we shall always be here to guide and impart knowledge to you in things and aspects that you are aware of or that you may not have known before. But this show aims at imparting this new knowledge and advising you accordingly on which issues you should consider. But to say, much as there is this breach of a promise to marry, it shouldn't be the reason as to why people should not help each other. If you are interested in helping one another, maybe by paying for them school fees, you should make it clear from the point of start on which kind of relationship you want to be in with that partner, so that you avoid all these litigations and all these inconsistencies that happen between the two married or the people who are intending to marry. And on the issue of registering ourselves as single people so that we acquire that status of being single, and I think we shall engage the Registrar General at URSB. Absolutely. Madam Masek, I think she would be able to expand more on the importance of this certificate of being referred to as a single person and many other issues. And it is clear that our viewers should also understand that effective yesterday's fix, there would be no more registering of hard copies of documents at URSB. They will all be done electronically. So engage your lawyers, engage your legal advisors to always help you and have your documents registered in this new era of technology. I am Kato Tumsime hosting this show always, and we shall be here next Tuesday as well for the same show. Keep it the alternative Digitalk and have a lovely afternoon.